Most people are afraid of coming home to an empty house. I came home early, and I wish to God the house had actually been empty. Welcome to Dad's True Life Revenge. Grab a snack, get comfortable, because this isn't the kind of story you can pause halfway through to make tea. And if you've ever had that feeling, that strange, hard-to-explain sense that something isn't right, not because you saw it, but because you felt it, like a scent in the air that doesn't belong there, then you know exactly what I mean. 23 years of marriage. 23 years of sharing a bed, a bank account, and a bathroom. Trust me, the bathroom is the real test of love. After that long, you develop something I can only describe as a sixth sense. You know when the other person is sad even when they're smiling. You know something's wrong before there's any proof. That afternoon I knew. From the moment I turned onto my street, I wasn't supposed to be there. My business trip to Denver ended a day early. Officially, the keynote speaker had a personal emergency. Unofficially, maybe he looked out at the audience and lost his faith in humanity. Either way, I caught the earliest flight home. No call. No text. I wanted it to be a surprise. Maybe I'd pick up Cassandra's favorite Thai food. Maybe for the first time in months we'd have dinner without a laptop sitting between us like a third person. I was in a good mood. That should have been my first warning. The first thing I noticed was the car. Preston's car. My son. 26, married with a perfectly decent apartment. One I helped furnish. So seeing his car parked in front of my house on a Tuesday afternoon wasn't strange. It was wrong. Completely wrong. I sat in my car for a few seconds staring at it, then said out loud, "Warren, why is your son's car here right now?" No answer. The second thing I noticed was the silence. Not the comfortable kind. Not the kind where people are just relaxing. This was heavy silence. The kind that makes the air feel thicker than it should be. I opened the door and stepped inside. And in that moment, everything changed. If you've made it this far, do me a small favor. Hit subscribe. Seriously. A lot of people watch but never do, and it costs you nothing, but it means more than you think. Thank you. Because what happened next was the moment I realized I wasn't the only one who knew something was wrong. Preston and Lindsay were sitting on the couch, together. And here's the part that still makes my skin crawl when I think about it. They weren't watching TV, they weren't on their phones. They were just sitting there, like two people in a waiting room. The kind who've already accepted whatever news is coming. Preston looked up first, and I need you to pay very close attention to this detail. He wasn't surprised to see me. Think about that for a second. Your father is supposed to be in Denver. He's not due back for another day. And suddenly he walks through the front door, unannounced. And you don't react. No flinch, no question, no natural expression at all. Just a slow blink, and a look I can only describe as calculated. Lindsay smiled, and I'm telling you that smile had no business existing that afternoon. I set my bag down. I asked Pri, "What's going on? Where's your mother?" Preston cleared his throat. "Dad, we were just about to call you." I looked at him. "Really?" I didn't ask. I stated it. He gave a small nod. "Mom had an episode this morning," he said. "She's at Mercy General now. She's stable." I didn't hear anything after Mercy General. Everything else got cut off like someone muted the sound inside my head. I turned around. 11 seconds later, I was in the car. I know that sounds like a strange number, but shocked as that. It makes you remember meaningless details, while the important things try to tear you apart from the inside. I called Kurt on the way. Curtis Barnes. My best friend since 1987. He's seen me through everything: marital problems, 2 recessions, and the disaster that was my attempt to grow a beard in 2009. If there's anyone in this world who will tell me the truth without sugarcoating it, it's Kurt. He picked up on the second ring. "Warren, what's going on?" "Cassandra's in the hospital," I said. "Mercy General." I just got home, and Preston and Lindsay were sitting in the living room like they already knew how the movie ends. Silence. On the other end, then Kurt said, "What do you mean, knew how it ends?" "My son didn't react when I walked in," I said. "I'm supposed to be in Denver." Another pause. Then, very quietly, he said, "Warren, you need to stay calm." "I am calm," I said. "No," he replied. "You're driving. That's not the same thing." He wasn't wrong. Mercy General is 15 minutes from my house. I made it in 9. I will not be answering any questions about that. When I walked into the hospital, I knew one thing. That feeling I had standing at my front door. It didn't go away. It came with me. And now, it was bigger, heavier, sharper. It wasn't a hunch anymore. It was a warning. Dr. Beverly Nash met me at the nurses' station, a woman in her 50s, steady voice, unshaken eyes. I liked that. Right now, I needed stability more than anything. Mr. Trevor, she said, I'm glad you're here. Your wife was brought in this morning by your son. She paused just long enough for me to keep up. She's showing signs of severe disorientation. Her organs are under stress. And there are elevated levels of toxicity in her blood. Toxicity. I repeated the word like I could understand it better if I slowed it down. She nodded. We're running more tests, but I want to be direct with you. The pattern we're seeing doesn't match a sudden illness. Another pause. It suggests something. Cumulative. Cumulative. That word hit like a silent punch. I placed my hand on the counter, trying to keep my voice level. Doctor, are you telling me something has been introduced into my wife's system? She didn't answer right away. She looked straight at me. I'm saying we need answers. And I believe you do too. I walked into the room, and I thought I was prepared. I wasn't. I've seen Cassandra in a lot of states, laughing so hard she couldn't breathe, angry enough to make me rethink every decision I've ever made. Exhausted, radiant, broken, but I had never seen her like this. She looked drained, like someone had found a switch inside her and slowly turned down everything that made her, her. Machines hummed in steady rhythm. An IV dripped quietly. And the woman who once chased a contractor out of our house with a wooden spoon for cutting corners was lying there. Small. I sat beside her, took her hand. It was colder than I expected. I leaned in and said softly, I'm here, and I'm not going anywhere until I know exactly what happened to you. I'm not a man who makes promises lightly, but when I do, I keep them. I stepped back outside. Preston and Lindsay were in the waiting area. Of course they were. Preston stood up. Dad, we need to talk. There are things you don't. I raised my hand. Just once. He stopped mid-sentence. There must have been something on my face in that moment. I don't know what it was, but it was enough. I said, not now. Then I turned away, walked to the corner of the waiting room, sat down, took out my phone, and did the one thing they never expected me to do. I started locking everything down. Every account, every access point, every single thing they could touch. One by one, I shut it all off. And when the notifications started lighting up their phones, I looked at Lindsay first. That smile, that out-of-place smile, gone, in a single second. And right then I knew. We weren't having a conversation anymore. We were in a war. And I had just kicked a hornet's nest. The only question left was how many hornets were inside. There's something you need to understand about denial. It isn't loud. It doesn't knock on your door and shout that something is wrong. It's more polite than that. It sits across from you, pours you a cup of coffee, and tells you everything is fine. That you're overthinking. That you're tired. That the people you love couldn't possibly do the things your instincts are screaming about. I lived with denial longer than I care to admit. But that night, sitting in the hospital parking lot at 9:43 p.m., with Cassandra somewhere above me hooked to machines, and Preston's expression replaying in my head, I got rid of it, permanently. Changed the locks. Threw away the key. I called Kurt. He picked up immediately. Talk to me, he said. She looks bad, Kurt, I said. And my voice betrayed me on that last word. The doctor mentioned toxicity. Said it's been building. Not sudden. I heard him exhale slowly. Then he said, Warren, building means intentional. I know, I said. And Preston and Lindsay were at the house. They're in the waiting room right now. Silence. Then Kurt said something I will never forget. You need to think very carefully about who's had access to Cassandra's food, drinks, and medication every day for the past few months. A pause. Who's been there? And then, it hit. Not a sound you hear, the kind you feel. 4 months ago, Cassandra twisted her ankle coming down the stairs. Nothing serious, but enough for Preston to step in, almost immediately. He suggested Lindsay come by every morning, help Cassandra with breakfast, her medication, keep an eye on things while I was at work. At the time, I thought it was care. I even told Kurt maybe I'd misjudged the kid. If I could go back to that moment, I'd do something very simple. I'd slap myself. I went back to the waiting room. Preston was standing near the vending machine, arms crossed, trying to look innocent, failing, spectacularly. Lindsay was sitting down, her phone face down on her lap. And you need to understand this, Lindsay never puts her phone down. I've seen her scroll during holiday prayers. So a phone placed face down. That's not a habit. That's strategy. I sat across from them. Preston spoke first. Dad, I know how this looks. I looked at him. Do you? Tell me how you think it looks. He shifted. Mom's had health issues for a while. We've just been helping. Lindsay comes every morning to make sure she eats and takes her vitamins. Vitamins? I repeated it. 3 supplements, he said. Which ones? I asked. He blinked. I said it again. Which ones? He looked at Lindsay. Lindsay looked down. 3 seconds. Just 3 seconds. But enough. Enough for me to not need another answer. I stood up. You two go home, I said. Dad, Preston started. I said his name once. Quiet. But enough. Go home. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. Because at that point I didn't have doubts anymore. I knew. And once you know, everything changes. The only question left was how far they'd gone. I sat alone in the waiting room with a cup of hospital coffee, and calling it coffee was already being generous. The clock read 2:00 a.m., and I started doing what any reasonable man would do when he suspects his own son might be poisoning his wife. I started digging, layer by layer, detail by detail. I opened the banking app, the last 6 months. I'm not an accountant. I don't even like online banking, but even I could see it. Something wasn't right. Small withdrawals. $200, $250, $202. Numbers that don't draw attention. They don't shout. They whisper. But when you add them up, they tell a different story. $11,000 in 5 months. From our joint account, mine and Cassandra's, the account Preston had access to for emergencies. $11,000. I stared at that number for a long time. Then I called Kurt. He picked up like he'd been waiting. 11,000, I said. No greeting. No build-up. From which account, he asked. The joint one. Small withdrawals. Regular. Deliberate. Kurt was quiet for a moment. Then he said, Warren, this isn't impulsive. This is a plan. Someone sat down and figured out how to not get caught. I closed my eyes. Just for a second. Then I said, my son. Those 2 words. I never thought I'd say them like that. In that context. Kurt spoke carefully. We're not completely certain yet. I said no. I know. Silence. Heavy. The kind you don't just hear, you feel it pressing against your ribs. Then Kurt said, Warren, I need you to prepare yourself. You think 11,000 is the problem, but I have a feeling. There's something much bigger behind it. And this is the part you need to remember. Kurt was about to find something that would make $11,000 look like pocket change. And it would change everything. If you've made it this far, do me a small favor. Hit subscribe. Seriously, so many people watch but never do. It costs you nothing, but it means more than you think. Thank you. Because what happened next wasn't just about money anymore. It wasn't just about suspicion anymore. It was about realizing the person you trusted most might have been planning something you couldn't even bring yourself to imagine. I leaned back in the chair, stared up at the hospital ceiling. Cold white lights. Nothing had changed. And yet everything had. And for the first time in hours, I wasn't wondering if I was right. I started wondering what I was still missing. The next morning, Kurt called me at 7:14. I remember the exact time, because I was staring at the clock, watching every minute crawl by waiting to be allowed in to see Cassandra. He didn't say hello. He went straight in. Warren, you need to prepare yourself. I didn't stand. I sat down, set my coffee aside. Go on. 6 weeks before Cassandra was admitted, she met with an attorney about her will. Alone. She didn't tell you. I closed my eyes. That part wasn't unusual. Cassandra liked surprises. She planned everything. Birthdays, anniversaries, even dinner could feel like a military operation. But what Kurt said next that changed everything. She updated her insurance policy. The old one, Preston, was the secondary beneficiary. Standard. You set that up years ago. But Cassandra changed it. She removed Preston completely and transferred the full benefit to a charitable foundation. One she's been quietly building for the past 2 years. The policy value $2.3 million. I didn't say anything. Not because I had nothing to say, but because everything suddenly connected, like pieces of a puzzle snapping into place. Preston knew. I don't know how, but he knew. He knew his mother was about to erase his name from $2.3 million. And instead of calling her, instead of asking, instead of doing anything a normal person would do, he sat down with his wife and made a decision. Make sure Cassandra didn't live long enough to finalize the paperwork. 30 days. The attorney had a 30-day processing window, and Cassandra had exactly 30 days. I sat there, in the waiting room, not moving, not thinking, just letting the full weight of that truth settle on me. $11,000 was never the goal, just the opening move. If you've made it this far, and you think this story has already gone far enough, believe me, it goes further. If you want more stories like this, hit like and subscribe. It really helps. Thank you. I stood up, straightened my jacket, took a deep breath, and made a decision. I wasn't going to explode. I wasn't going to confront them. I wasn't going to give them even a second to prepare. I was going to do the one thing they never thought I could do. I was going to be patient. I called my lawyer, Margaret Holloway, 30 years of experience, a voice that didn't need volume to command silence. I told her everything, the money, the vitamins, the insurance, the timeline. She was quiet for 4 seconds. Then she said, "Don't touch anything in the house. Don't talk to them. Don't post anything. Don't hint at anything." "Can you do that?" "I can," I said. "Good," she replied. "Because when this unfolds, it will unfold completely. No way out." I asked, "I want them to feel every part of it." She said, "Trust me, they will feel every square inch." For the first time in hours, I almost smiled. Almost. Because now this wasn't suspicion anymore. This was a plan. And me. The next 72 hours were the longest of my life. Not because nothing was happening, but because too much was happening all at once. Cassandra started to stabilize. Dr. Nash said the treatment was working. Her kidney function was improving. And on the second day she opened her eyes, looked at me, and said in a weak voice that still somehow carried its edge, "Warren, you look terrible." I laughed. A real laugh. Right there in the ICU. The nurse looked at me, like I'd lost my mind. Maybe I had lost a piece of it. But hearing Cassandra speak like that again, that familiar sharpness I'd lived with for 23 years, it was like someone flipped a switch back on inside my chest. I took her hand. "You're safe," I said. "Everything's being handled." She looked at me, longer than usual, then said very quietly, "It's Preston, isn't it?" Not a question. A conclusion. I didn't answer. I just tightened my grip on her hand. She closed her eyes again. "You know," she murmured, "I always thought he got the worst parts of me, and none of the good ones." Even like that, Cassandra still saw more clearly than anyone else. By the 4th day, Margaret called. Her tone hadn't changed, but the content had. "Warren, we have enough." Kurt had done his work. Security footage from a pharmacy 2 towns over. 3 purchases. Same supplement each time. Always paid in cash. Always alone. Except the 3rd time, Lindsay sat in the car, waiting. That supplement contained a compound. Taken over time in small doses, tasteless. It created exactly the toxicity pattern Dr. Nash had identified. Margaret continued, "We have bank statements. We have the money trail. We have access logs. And here's the part you'll appreciate." Preston called the attorney's office. Pretended to be Cassandra's assistant. Asked about the status of the policy change. He left a number. His own. I was silent. 10 seconds. Then I said, Kurt, did I raise a criminal mastermind? Or an idiot? Kurt replied. Both. And that's the problem. If you've made it this far, you already know where this is going. But trust me, how it happens is what you'll remember. Hit subscribe. Stay until the end. Because this is where things start getting paid for. Day 5, they came to the hospital. Together. Carrying flowers. Flowers. I looked at that bouquet and realized some people don't understand irony until it's standing right in front of them. Preston walked in, smiling. Dad, how's Mom doing? We've been so worried. I looked at him, then at Lindsay, then back again. She's awake, I said. She's talking, and she's going to make a full recovery. I saw it. Something flickered behind his eyes. Not relief, not happiness. Calculation. Quick, cold. Lindsay said, That's wonderful news. I nodded, then said the police are on their way. No raised voice, no drama. Just a sentence. Like I was commenting on the weather. The color drained from Preston's face so fast it was almost impressive. What Margaret filed everything this morning, I said. The footage. The bank records. The calls. The toxicology. All of it. Neatly packaged. Lindsay made a sound, not a word. Just the moment a person loses control. Preston started, Dad. Just listen. I cut him off. No. There isn't a sentence in this language that can explain what you did. So don't. I glanced at the flowers. Then said, Nice bouquet. Cassandra will love them. From someone else. They were arrested right there in the hospital parking lot. I stood by the window looking down. Everything unfolded exactly the way Margaret said it would. No shouting, no chaos. Just 2 uniformed officers walking up a few quiet words, and then the handcuffs. Preston tried to say something. He always believed words were his strongest weapon. This time they didn't work. Lindsay stayed silent. The calculated kind of silence. Like she was already one move ahead, thinking about deals, thinking about reduced sentences. Kurt was standing next to me. I didn't even notice when he arrived. He's always been like that. Shows up when it matters. He asked, How do you feel? I thought for a moment. Then I told the truth. Like I've aged 10 years in 5 days. Like I want to sleep for a month. Like I've lost something I'm never getting back. I paused. Then added, But also, like this is the first time in my life I'm completely certain about something. Kurt nodded. What about Cassandra? I turned back toward the hallway. Through the small window of her room I could see her. Small, but still there. Cassandra's going to be fine, I said. She always is. She's the strongest person I know. And she chose to marry me. That alone proves she can survive anything. Kurt laughed. A real laugh. Light, short, but enough to take some weight out of the air. 3 months later, Cassandra walked back into the house. A Saturday morning. Golden light spilling through the hallway. She stood there looking around like she was taking inventory of everything she almost lost. Then she turned to me and said, Warren, the kitchen needs repainting. I looked at her, then at the wall, then back at her. No chance, I said. I just painted it 2 years ago. She pointed. That's not white, she said. That's the color of an administrative apology. I looked again, then picked up my phone and called a painter. If you've come this far with me, you've seen everything. But there's one thing you should take with you. You can't control what people become in the dark. You can only control what you do when the lights come on. If this story made you think, if it made you feel something, join us. Hit like, subscribe. Because stories like this, they're not just about revenge. They're about truth. And what we do when we finally see it. The trial lasted 11 days. 11 days of hearing everything again. Every detail. Every piece of evidence. Every cold decision replayed in front of everyone. I sat there, next to Cassandra, her hand in mine steady firm as if what happened hadn't broken her. Margaret stood across the room, calm, precise, not a single wasted word. She didn't need drama. The truth was heavy enough. Pharmacy footage, bank records, toxicology reports. the impersonated phone call. Each piece on its own just a fragment. But put together, it wasn't suspicion anymore. It was a map, a plan, clear, calculated, intentional. Preston sat there in a suit I once paid for, staring straight ahead. Not at me, not at Cassandra. Lindsay was different. She kept looking around, assessing, measuring, like she was still searching for a way out. But there wasn't one. Not anymore. The jury stepped out. The room went quiet. A familiar kind of silence, but this time it wasn't heavy. It wasn't frightening. It was just waiting. 4 hours later, they came back. I didn't stand. I didn't need to. When things are that clear, you don't question the ending. The judge read the verdict. Guilty. Both of them. Conspiracy. Attempted murder. Financial fraud. The words landed not fast, not slow, just certain. I didn't look at Preston. Not because I didn't want to, but because I didn't need to. That moment wasn't about him anymore. It was about Cassandra. She squeezed my hand, tighter, like steel. Then she leaned closer and whispered, "I want Thai food." I turned to her. Now she opened her eyes, looked at me and said, "I've been thinking about Thai food for 3 months, Warren. Don't test me." I nodded. "All right." We stood up, walked out of the courtroom, left everything behind. If you've come this far, you've already seen what matters most. Not the verdict, not the crime, but what comes after. If you believe stories like this deserve to be told, hit like and subscribe, because the one thing I want you to remember isn't what they did, it's what we survived. And this story didn't end in the courtroom. It ended where it began. At home. I told you from the very beginning I came home early, and I wished that house had been empty. I was wrong. I'm glad I came home. I'm glad I walked through that door. And if you think that was just luck, it wasn't. That was the moment the light came on. And when the light comes on, you don't get to look away. You have to see. You have to face it. You have to decide what you're going to do next. 3 months later, we were sitting around a table. Cassandra, Kurt, Margaret, Dr. Nash. Everyone was laughing, talking. Cassandra was telling one long story, waving her hands around like she had never spent a day in intensive care. And I looked at her, not because I'd never looked before, but because this time I understood the value of being able to. There are things in life you assume will always be there until you almost lose them. Family, trust, safety. And when those things break, they don't always break loudly. Sometimes they break in silence, one piece at a time. That was the first lesson. Do not ignore small signs. The details you keep talking yourself into believing don't matter, because sometimes those small things are the very things trying to save you. The second lesson, don't let denial become your shelter. The truth does not disappear just because you refuse to look at it. It just waits. And when it comes back, it usually brings consequences with it. And the last lesson, you cannot control what other people become in the dark, but you can control how you respond when the light comes on. You can choose action, choose truth, choose to protect what matters. If you are in a situation where your instincts are telling you something is wrong, don't stay silent. Don't wait. Look closer. Ask more questions. And if necessary, act sooner. Because I came home just 1 day early. 1 day. And that day saved my wife's life. If you stayed with me all the way to the end, thank you, truly. If this story made you think, if it made you feel something, join our community. Hit like, subscribe, because here we don't just tell stories. We talk about what happens inside families in the dark, and in the moments when everything changes, and maybe the next story will be the one you need to hear at exactly the right time.